I hate these chairs. My back doesn't go like this. That's how these chairs are formed. They're formed like a bowl. Hello, welcome to May Thomas Trash Talk.
Woo!
Today we're going to be talking trash about ladies. As in, we're going to be talking about the female representation on the Island of Sodor. There are plenty of ladies. There's a train name lady, there's Grass, there's Lady Hat who doesn't say anything.
Just say Grass?
Yeah, if we count Grass as female characters, we've got plenty of it.
Grass? You didn't go with cows? That would have at least slightly made sense. You went with grass.
I think to properly assess the situation, we have to go back to 1945 when this book was first published. Because from 45 to, 72-ish, we have 26 books, 4 stories per book, so that's 100 and a number of stories. Who is to blame for this? I mean, the best place to start is at the very beginning.
I don't know that blame is the right... Blame sounds really attacky.
I won't verbally assault people with
Well, okay,
blame.
So this is not a new thing in children's media, to have a male-female ratio that is extremely skewed.
Yeah.
This is one of the older properties to show that because it starts with the books back in the 40s and is a product of its time. It took it a while to try to catch up, and even then leaves some to be desired.
Well, and I think the part of the problem is that back in the 40s, railway work was a man's job. So those were the people with the kids that were going to be more interested in something like that. It was industrial and
that was the society
hard
of the
labor.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you look at...
If you look at the timeline, just the difference between when the books were published and when the show started, that's really a turning point of when those expectations started to change.
So then we get locked into something. So let me go to... So in 1961, we get our first female representation. That's 16 books in, 16 years after the first one, in 1945. And we all know who the first female character in the book is and who the first female character in the television series is. And it's Katie's favorite. It's Daisy, who looks awful in this artwork. Not all characters had faces.
So if you watch Confusion and Delay, which if you're watching these videos you probably have, you are aware of the fact that Daisy bothers me tremendously, because that's the biggest case personality assassination I've ever seen.
I think part of the problem is that because your problem with this character is not that she's got bad characterization, it's that she's the first female representation and that's the representation that they chose.
Yeah.
If I remember from that discussion correctly.
Yes. If there were 10 female characters and one of them was a bitch, I'd be okay with that. If there's one female character, she's the only female character, and she's a bitch, I have a problem with that. Because that representation, I'd rather have none than that.
See, I think Bitchy Daisy is hysterical. And she learns over the course of the story, and I think that's what the difference point is that by the end of the book, she is helpful. It's no, you're right, I shouldn't have done this, and I should learn to work with everyone and do the jobs that I'm told to do, and, whatever. So then 2 years later, we get another book that's Stephanie? Yes, okay, I was Stephanie's the next one? And we get a story called Train Stops Play, and that one we have Caroline, who's the car.
Yeah, we start seeing female characters, but they're not engines. You've got Annie and Clarabelle with Thomas.
Technically, yeah. So if we're going with that, then we're jumping back to the second book?
Right,
at the end?
but they're what purpose do they accomplish character-wise? I get that they're coaches and people get in them, but from the plot character perspective,
they are supporting characters for
they
Thomas.
make commentary.
Yeah.
And that's all they do. They don't contribute to the plot. They don't affect the plot.
Not usually. You get a few of the episodes in the newer seasons that work. But
if we're talking about it from
books,
the beginning, from the source material, they almost fall into sexy lamp category.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This is also frustrating because from what we have experienced in the library events that we've done, and in the in-person events that we have done and witnessed, and in the parks, the girls are just as excited.
If not more.
If not more. Like, they are dedicated. I mean, you want to talk about collecting small, pretty things. Girls are here for this. Like, collecting colorful engines is 100% within, like, standard operating guidelines for young girls. And it's frustrating that for them, when you say, well, what's your favorite character, do they choose from a small collection of girls that they might not actually like very well? Or do they pick a male character because there's more personalities to choose from? And then you start breaking down the, oh, well, why is that your favorite? Or, oh, I like this one because it's pink. Like, it gets into a very deep discussion of the gender roles that have been so enforced in our culture for so long.
Yeah.
Part of that goes back to the 70s and 80s. The toy companies started really heavily gendering toys. The Toys That Made Us the Toys That Made Us is a very interesting set of documentaries about how, and when you watch those you realize how much the marketing is what determines how gender specific an item is, because video games were really considered both girl and boy focused for years, and then they had to decide what aisle are they sold in, and they put them in the boys aisle, despite the fact that when you look at the development of video games, girls were some of the biggest developers, like Roberta Williams. Like, it gets really frustrating. I'm going to go off on a complete tangent. It gets really frustrating to see something that can and should be enjoyed by all children being told, this is for this set, not this set.
Yeah.
When inherently trains don't have gender.
Yeah.
Like, this is entirely a projection onto these inanimate objects
and therefore
by our
should
culture.
Have been equalized and
Right. It's not like when you're looking at animals, and we've had for a long time, we've had cultural ideas of cats being more feminine and dogs being more masculine. So then you get a movie like Homeward Bound, and you have male dogs and female cats, and that's a lot more normalized.
Or you go to 2019
decades.
and you just get the movie musical Cats, and then everything is just a mess, and that's not gendered left or right. That's just nobody wants it. And so then we jump to 1972, and we get Mavis,
who at least has a personality.
And that's the end of them for the books.
And that's so frustrating.
26. So I mean, this is just Wilbert's books.
Yeah. Now, again, you also looking at it within the context. This was a man telling stories to his son. So of course those characters are going to be characters that are more relevant to that specific audience. And then he went, yeah, I guess I can publish these with a male audience in mind. Mostly because that's how society has functioned for a long time anyway. The difference when you get into the television series, yes, they had to stick to the books for the early seasons.
And that's what I was going to go with was, they were legally contracted to stick with the stories that were written and published. And this set of collection, anything that Christopher wrote, anything that was published in the Thomas annuals, which was why they were able to do a little bit more flexibility with some of the stories. And then once Audrey passed away, and then they were able to create their own stories, then becomes the problem of so from that point, like, I can't really blame them for not introducing characters because they legally couldn't do it.
They were obligated to stick to the source material.
Which is like, okay.
Yeah.
So then when they had the flexibility to do whatever they want, now we saw a separate problem, which was, can we financially allow ourselves to create new characters and hope that they will not only be well received for the show, but also sell as toys, basically.
Yeah.
And that's going back and forth between not even just male and female representation on the show, but just new characters in general. So you get to season 5, and you see all these new characters start coming. Not a whole lot, but a good decent amount. You get 3 new cars. You get a coach named Old Slow Coach, who's female. No
What kind of
We
title
haven't gotten.
is that?
I don't. And then she gets fixed, and then that's we haven't gotten there yet. She gets fixed, and like she's still called Old Slow. I don't get it. You get Caroline comes back for a couple episodes. Cranky's introduced in season 5. I think that's it. So you start to see nothing, and then you see Magic Railroad come out, and then you get lady who wasn't even supposed to talk in the movie.
Yeah.
So like that's part of my like I can't technically fault.
She spends most of the film as a real world non-talking train.
Yeah.
So like that's just a separate category. We've already accepted the Magic Railroad's kind of an AU in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't exist. It's in its own timeline and bubble. And which is unfortunate because she's got such a good character design. She's so pretty.
Yeah.
That shade of purple is very distinctive and very pretty.
So then as you continue through over the next several years, you see different characters pop up. They decided to switch them. They decided to switch their perspective of what new characters we want to introduce, because you got to think about the fact that they have to create these models for these characters. It's not like they could just design them in a computer and be like, oh, I'll just tweak it as we go.
Yeah.
So now they have to go through all these design phases to create all of these different trains, and then season 6 and 7 and 8, you start to just see characters that'll show up for an episode and then never be seen again. So you spend all this money putting together all these different trains to put out onto the line for merchandising, and then you don't do anything else with them. And you see a couple of female characters pop up there. Specifically, I'm thinking of Molly, who is the biggest and one of the ugliest trains. Seasons like 6 through 10 like had some real garbage, ugly looking trains. So then as you continue moving forward and we switch to CGI, you start to slowly see more and more implemented into the plot. Well, and then also, talking about gender identity, you know, if you don't know this yet, I don't even remember the episode. One of the narrators was narrating for Rusty and said that she went somewhere, and everyone was like,
Yikes!
So gender identity. Rusty is non-binary. We go into the CGI era and we start to slowly see more females creep in and be like, I'm a lady. So I feel like every season or so we start to see one more female character that's a main character now added.
Right.
So we see Belle, who works with the Sodor Search and Rescue Center. And she is a fire engine and has like water tanks and everything. So she's got a purpose, she's got a personality, she's got a bell, because that's her name.
Imaginative.
So, then I think it's the next one. Maybe another season afterwards, we get Connor and Caitlin together. So then we see Caitlin has a lot of episodes that are by herself and like trying to identify herself as separate from her twin brother kind of thing. So I was like, that's really nice. But more recently, in the last few years, we've had more and more female characters with like Ashima and Rebecca and
Emily.
Nia and Emily. Oh, I forgot all about Emily. Emily came in season 7.
Oops, sorry.
So Emily came in season 7, and she became, so that was one of the deciding factors so that was about the time that Britt had transitioned. Nobody knows what actually happened, nor is it my place to talk about at this point, but anyway, so bought Thomas and Friends, and that was the time that they were trying to figure out like a structured formula and format. And originally they said, we're going to create this thing called the Steam Team, and they said it's going to be engines 1 through 8. It's going to be Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James, Percy, Toby, and Duck. And then they introduced Emily and said, you know what, let's Duck's out. They basically said, let's shove one female in here. So then you start
One of 8.
I know, yeah. So then, when season 22 starts, when Big World Big Adventure starts, with the rebranding and everything, people had a complete hissy fit, because there were 3 females and 4 males, or 5, I guess, males on the Steam Team, and it's like...
That's still not even half.
No. And I don't like them. And this is my biggest issue, is people will say, I don't like them. And it's, why don't you like, you know where this is going. Why don't you like them? Because I like Edward and Henry, and I miss them. And I'm like, well, you know what? They're 75 years old. Maybe we should scrap them. Oh, they weren't scrapped? Well, shut the hell up! I don't like Rebecca and Emma. I don't like Rebecca, and I don't like Nia, and I don't like Emily because they're different, because they're girls. Well, first of all, trains don't have gender, so let's try again. Second of all, this is a fictionalized show. So if you're obsessing over this, then I don't know what the hell's going on in the real world. We have other problems. And number 3, if you don't like girls, have fun having a, individual single life the rest of your life, you whiny ass white guys.
I hate
probably.
How often does this show pass the Bechdel test?
Explain to them what the Bechdel test is.
Let me explain the Bechdel test. And if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but I could be wrong. Who knows? So the Bechdel test is, are there 2 female characters who hold a conversation that is not about a man? It sounds like a very easy test. You would be shocked to discover how many things, TV shows, movies, whatever,
no,
do not pass this test.
My question is, what is the determining factor of speaking? Is it just in general? So like
any conversation.
I'll give so like in the book, Mavis talks to Daisy and says, I can't stand Toby, I'd rather work by myself. And she goes, yeah, I understand. Like, that
still doesn't pass the test.
Okay.
Can they have a conversation that is not about a man or a male character?
Well, I don't know.
And the reason that it's very difficult is if there's very few female characters, if they're talking about someone else, they're probably talking about a man because the ratio is so skewed that there's nothing else for them to talk about. The worst is when you get a film or TV show where there's a single female character, so there's literally no way for them to talk to another female character.
Well, the problem that I'm having with you asking this question about this show is most of the conversation pieces that happen are about someone, thing, engine, whatever, or truck or coach or accident has happened, and they're talking about that accident, or they're talking about whatever job they have. So it's more work conversation and not socializing conversation. The show is in a weird spot where you can't really...
Okay. The test asks the user to determine 2 aspects of the creative work. 1, at least 2 women who talk to each other, and 2, about something other than a man. The test sometimes adds that the 2 women must be named characters.
I'll give more recent, the last 3 seasons, I would give a few of the episodes that, because there's more, now that there are more female characters, there's more interaction and discussions about those types of... Oh, Rosie. Forgot about Rosie, who was basically female Thomas for a while.
Yeah.
And now has a personality. Marion. Oh, Marion's fun. I'm glad that I got this out like at the end of this video. So Marion is the big shovel crane. What is she called? Steam shovel. And she loves digging, and she's super excited. We got another female character that was added to the Sodor construction company as well, whose name I can't remember because I've only seen the episode once, because I don't watch this show all that much.
But again, as you're flipping through
Millie,
this book,
you're seeing I'm flipping through several pages to get to that point.
Yep. And a lot of these pages have several male characters on them. It's not even one character per page.
And there's Mavis. Cheery Mavis always looks out for other engines. My other problem is that the characters that last the longest are the ones that have distinct personality traits. So you look at Salty, who was added and everyone was like, man, maybe this character's going to be a one-off. And then turned out, surprise, like Pirate Seaside Diesel was like, good choice.
The more distinct the character is, the easier it is to write for them.
Yes.
The easier it is to picture them in a scenario and say, how would they react in this situation, what would they say? If you add a whole bunch of female characters that don't really have distinct personalities, you're not really going to be able to write for them, and you're not going to use them.
You got one of the breakdown trains, which was rebranded as a female. There's Annie and Clarabelle.
Now, if I was going to be like, let's super nitpick. I'd talk about the fact that most of the do we have any male coaches? Or are all of the coaches female? Is it all of...
All of the named coaches, which are 4, are all female. But they don't go into discussion about the genders of the other coaches as far as I know. Toad is a break fan and is male.
Okay.
That's about all I
So,
got.
if we really wanted to dig deep, it'd be analyzing the fact that
we've
these
also got-
subservient characters who exist only to assist the male characters are all female?
We've got,
Or almost all female?
yeah,
That's a whole different discussion, though.
Carly. I was like, what's the other crane's name? We got a new crane named Carly who's not in this book.
There's
They published this
a
book
coach named Catherine.
Yes.
It's with a C. I know because our goal was to find engines or trains or coaches with all of our names for my sister's train collection. We had Rusty and Catherine, and that was it.
They published this book and then add 8 million new characters, and I'm like, well, now this book's outdated after like 3 seconds. This is what's good about this, like, Big World of Big Adventure show, is people complain about, I didn't like the non-Sodor stories, and I'm like, that's great, then you can go back and watch season 1 for the 800th time. Like, have fun. But the one big thing that Big World Big Adventures does is you look through the book and you see, now this is specifically from
The Great Race.
the Great Railway Show and the Great Race. You'll see bits and pieces of them filter through, but you've got Ashima, you've got Frida, you've got Gina, you've got... Those are all
So
boys.
when you started intentionally adding diversity, it also got more female characters?
And that's a whole separate discussion, yeah. Like,
You had to actively try?
to be able to...
Ah!
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I understand it in the original source material within the societal context of the time in which it was produced.
But once
As time
1997
moved forward,
hit, like,
there's no
should've been-
excuse.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to take this as I'm trashing the original source material. I'm not. It was produced in a specific period of time and makes sense within that context.
And
However,
that
if it's
time
going
frame,
to
yeah.
stay relevant and it's going to stay current, it needs to put in the effort to stay relevant and current.
Well, especially like we like you mentioned, like 5 years ago when we first did our round of library programs for Thomas, it was very jarringly surprising, I think, to all of us, how many older girls were there too. Like, they were like at what, 9, 10, some of them?
Yeah, 8, 9, and they weren't there because of a younger sibling. They weren't there because they got dragged. They were active
They had
and
their
they were
trains with them.
enthusiastic participants.
That was one of the cool things about doing that program, is being able to talk to the kids about these characters and stuff, because
Yeah.
although they, you know, like most of us when we were kids, brought in their little trains and stuff and sat down and we got into conversations about them and like why they like that train, and then two of the kids brought in, one of them brought in...
He brought in Rosie. That was pretty common to see.
Somebody brought in Rosie, but no, somebody brought in Bash or Dash. I don't remember which one. One of those stupid ones. We don't talk about that special. That special is irritating. And I was asking the boy about whatever train it was, and his sister was like, I don't like that train. And I was like, good. I didn't really say it like that, but I was like, I'm glad that, you know,
They're not
your
just blindly,
opinion's valid.
I like everything.
Yeah. Even looking in the store, though, it's like, it's so hard to deter. Well, Mattel's having a hard time with figuring out what's selling, period, at this point. And now that it's the 75th anniversary, everything is going to be jarringly skewed all over the place to just Thomas-related merchandise. But even then, this is my other problem, is that because this is a UK-based property to begin with, they're getting a lot of this merchandise for this anniversary, and you're seeing a little bit more of the representation over there as far as, like, because you've got the new episodes out, so you're going to see, you've got Duchess in this new special that came out,
Yeah.
so you're going to see a lot of her come out, especially in the UK. And I was at the store this morning, and I was like, I got one Thomas thing for the anniversary, and then I've got a whole bunch of random stuff. I think I saw one Rebecca take-along, whatever we're calling them now. And then that was it. Everything else was Thomas Percy James. You know, I will say one negative thing about all these other female characters being added to the Steam team is just nothing to do with the characters themselves.
Okay.
It's the fact that the engine roll call is such a mess now.
Oh, yeah, that's valid. That's valid. I don't
Red,
know.
yellow, orange, green, all the colors, and blue. Like,
We're not talking about a great start.
I mean, you're right.
It wasn't
They
a great
should.
place to start with.
God, it
Should have gotten a new song.